What is up, YouTube? It is Mike here, Grinding Gears Garage. We have another video for you guys. We're going to be working on my XR250L. As you can see, it's become a coat rack and parts storage. I started this about a year ago, right before we started the channel actually. I smoked the cam bearings in it. The previous owner, I don't know if you ever changed the screen that was in the bottom end for the oil. It doesn't have a filter, it has a screen. And I don't think he ever changed it, so I had some oiling issues to the top end. Both cam bearings were smoked. It was in pretty rough shape, so we decided to do a full rebuild, tore it apart, put it on the shelf because I was waiting on some parts, and then I started buying quads and I ran out of room and I just stopped working on it. So I just bought a new motorcycle. It's back there in the corner. I will have a video on that probably right after this one. But we want to get this done and running so we can utilize the motorcycle lift. I am going to be working on my other motorcycle, getting it ready for sale in the spring. We're going to do a video on valve adjustment, a couple maintenance items we're going to square away before we put it up for sale. So on this one, we're going to be assembling the bottom end. I actually have it here. I have to take it apart and we're going to do crank bearings in it, and I have to do an output bearing for where the output shaft comes out. So I gotta take a few things apart. I test fitted some items the other day just to make sure everything worked. So we're gonna take everything apart, replace those few items, and then we're going to go ahead and start with a rebuild video, bottom end. We're gonna show putting the crank in, timing it, putting the flywheel on, and then we're gonna install the transmission, show you guys all the working parts. I highly recommend picking one of these up. I got mine off eBay for like $5. If you need information, I can always photocopy it for you, send it to you. It's very, very helpful when putting this bottom end together. So we're gonna go ahead and get everything ready for you guys, and we will dive into assembling the bottom end on our Honda XR250L Enduro. All right, so we got our engine disassembled here. We put our new output bearing in, and when you have everything apart, just check to make sure all your bearings rotate freely. There's no like hard spots in them, they all spin freely. Should be good to go. Now, one thing you're going to want to do for this assembly is your balancer here. Ew. Sorry, the camera's upside down, it's a little hard. If you notice, the teeth do not line up right now. There's a spring inside, and there's a hole here on the bottom and a hole here on the top. What we're going to do is take a 2mm Allen wrench. It's roughly a 2mm hole, and we're going to insert the Allen wrench as an alignment tool. They do sell pins, 2mm pins, but I do not have one, so just a real easy way to align these. So the Allen wrench inserted, you want to make sure you don't have it really hanging out the bottom here, because you don't want it to be interfering with your installation. Now we have our crank here. Now there are, if you can see, oh, come on camera, focus. There is a alignment mark right here on the balancer. There's also one here on the crank, but I pressed the bearing on already. You can press it into the case if you want. I did it opposite. But what's nice is on the top side of the crank, it's hard to see. It is right there. The camera won't focus. It's right there. There we go. And then there was also one on the top of the balancer. Right there. These need to be aligned, and they actually match the marks on the bottom as well. So there's two alignment methods. So we're going to go ahead and just set this in here, giving a rough alignment. I try to, there we go, align it the best I can before inserting. Now the bearing may fight you a little, so we're going to go ahead and tap the crank into place. Well, it looks like we are, before you drive it all the way in, I'd just like to check. It looks like we're just about a tooth off possibly. Well, they're aligned, they're just slightly offset. So let me take it back out and see if we can get it lined up a little bit better. So there we go, we got everything installed and lined up. We have a new bearing on the clutch side as well. I installed that already. The one that goes on the stator side actually has a seal. Here, I will actually show you. You can see has a seal there to keep the engine oil from getting the stator. So we're actually going to put the stator back on to keep everything on this side together, so if we flip anything, the crank can't fall out. So we're just going to rest it like that. Take our flywheel, make sure it's nice and clean. Now there is a Woodruff key. As you can see, it is right here. Make sure that is installed. If you have any markings on the crank, any like wear or anything like that, make sure you lap it. Lap the mating surface here to the crank so you don't shear any Woodruff keys. I will attach our video that we did about lapping a flywheel to the crank in the description below. So just make sure you line up your keyway. We have our bolt here, which takes a 17 millimeter socket to the top. We're going to reinstall that, and I have to look up the torque spec on this bolt. We're going to go ahead and torque it right away so we don't forget. So the flywheel bolt gets torqued to 76 foot-pounds. Once again, it's great to have this service manual. Honda service manual has all the torque specs in it. So we're going to take our 17 millimeter and go ahead and torque this. Well, you know what? We're actually going to wait to torque this, but don't forget to torque this 76 foot-pounds. I'm going to wait till I have everything together. You can hold on to it a little bit better. This can be a little tough. So we're going to flip the engine back over and go ahead, show you all the transmission parts and put it back together. So we have all of our transmission parts sitting off camera here, but we just, having this manual is wonderful. We had a lot of problems. When we took it apart, our gear stacks kind of came apart. Now what's nice is, this is our output shaft. You can see your output sprocket goes right here. Only the first two gears on the outside can come off. There's actually a locking rings that keep these two in place. So all you have to do is figure out these two here on the inboard side and these two on the output side. Now having a manual helps you know what teeth count go where and what gear goes where essentially. So we have this stack completed, and then this is our driven side, which is off of, this is where your clutch basket attaches. Same thing, only the first two gears come off. This one is fixed in place by a snap ring, and these two just slide on the spline shaft. So we're going to put these back on. This inner one has a little bearing hub here. Slide that bad boy on. And slide this on. Then take note, there is a washer that goes on the, oops, there's a washer here that goes on the outboard side. You can't forget that. It'll throw off your alignment and spacing. So installing this can be a little tricky, it can be a little tough. So what I like to do is take both of these, so they're going to mesh like this. So I try and take this takes a little practice, line up driven side, kind of just, oh wow, holy shit. I may actually have it lined up first try, I think. This can be a little tricky to do. Nope, I think I jumped the gun. So I'm going to pull it back out and try it again. I'll do it off camera. It takes a few tries to get in and out. It's really tight to get your hands in here to try and line everything up perfectly when you drop it in. So, looks like we have everything in place. It won't spin because the gear selectors are in the way. But once we get everything lined up, it'll work way better. We get the shift drum and all the forks in. So we're going to open up our service manual here to get to the shift fork alignment. The forks are marked where they go. They have letters on them. Trying to pass it. There we go. So you're going to have letters here. This one has a camera won't focus, but this one has an R, L, and C. This may vary for years and models, but what we're going to do is we're going to put the shift forks in first on the correct shifter gear, and then we're going to put the alignment rod in after we get the shift drum in place. So it's kind of it's a weird process. I've done it a couple times off camera to try and perfect it, so I am going to do it now for you. So L goes first, and it goes on the output shaft on the bottom shifter gear. And then C goes next, and that goes on the driven gear. Now this one's a little tough, but with some, there we go, that one goes there. And then finally R goes right on top there. And you can see all of the, well, you can kind of see all of the tits on the shift fork face the hole for the shift drum. So we're actually going to slide these around a little bit. You want to make sure they move, because getting this in can be a little tough. Alright, so let's see here. So sometimes moving the shifter gears up and down helps. It's tough. I'll just shut the camera off. It's really not, you gotta have to figure out how to do it yourself. It's a little bit of a process, but there's 3 slots here. This is for the bottom one, L, it's for the middle one, C, and this is for the top one, R. So it's pretty straightforward. You just have to get each fork in the correct path here. So of course, as soon as I shut the camera off, I got a first try. So now that we got all this, the shifter rods in place, we're going to put in the alignment pin. Now this may take a little finagling and tapping with a hammer. The chamfer on the end of this isn't real big, so sometimes going through some of these shifter gears can be a little tough. So if you want to go crazy, it is only a small rod. But now one of these is preventing me from lining this up. But then there's a pocket in the bottom. You're going to line everything up, and it's the mounting post for the gear, or the shifter rods. There we go. So that's in place. Last but not least is our shifter assembly. This is pretty easy to install. This actually slides back, so you can put it in place, slide it back, and with a little back and forth, oop, gotta call it this time. A little back and forth, and get it down. This is where a block of wood comes in handy, because the shifter hangs lower than the flywheel. There we go. So pretty much we have all of the internals for this side of the engine in. We are going to make sure our gasket surface is clean and grab the other case half, which is sitting right here. Make sure this surface is clean. We have a few areas here we got to clean up, and then we're going to put the gasket on and button up the bottom end. So we're going to go ahead and do that now, and we will be back to put the case halves together, torque everything down, and then in the next video we'll do the outer side, so like the clutch basket, the oil pump, all that assembly. So we got our new gasket on here. Try not to be a jackass like me and lose the bolts. I didn't lose them, they're on the shelf somewhere, I just have to find them. So make sure you have all your bearings. We have our new crank bearing here, and we have our 3 new bearings here in the other case half. So essentially you're just going to flip it over and reinstall. It's pretty straightforward, super simple. It's just hard parts of lining everything up. So once you get it lined up, And in place, you're going to torque your case bolts to 9 foot-pounds. It's out of the manual. So we're going to get everything lined up, torqued down. And in our next video, we're going to tackle the outer part of the case here. So thanks for watching, guys. As always, subscribe to the channel, like the video, send us any messages on Facebook with any questions. And we will be back hopefully later this week with an outer case reassembly on our XR250L. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, it's Mike with Grinding Gears Garage. So have a good one.